Welcome to the Latte Lounge podcast. Join me, your host, Katie Taylor, as we talk balancing hormones, busting myths, breaking taboos, boosting libidos, and bolstering confidence. This series is brought to you in partnership with the Latte Lounge Plus, the new online menopause clinic where you can get online appointments with an experienced menopause doctor, a personalised treatment plan to manage symptoms and prescriptions, if right for you, delivered to your door, all for just £45 a month, and that includes prescriptions too. So check out the show notes for more details on how to get your appointment booked in. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to food coach and menopause expert Meera Bhogal about how we can all cook our way to a happier menopause. We'll be talking about how many women can develop in midlife or discover they were suffering for years before with allergies and food intolerances, which can affect your quality of life during midlife and menopause. We'll also be discussing how through Meera's own personal journey with food allergies, she created a brand new healthy and nutrition-rich food brand. Meera Bhogal is the founder of the healthy food brand Meera's Made from Scratch, which she created after realising that much of the gluten and dairy-free food she needed to eat contained far too much sugar. She's hugely passionate about raising awareness of menopause, especially within South Asian communities, where it's often not spoken about openly. So welcome, Meera. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited to speak to you. It's going to be wonderful.
Oh, lovely. Ditto. Now, listen, so many women obviously complain of suffering with a whole host of different symptoms during midlife and these sort of perimenopause, menopause years. And often they're either treated perhaps with strong medications or referrals to different specialists. And then you have women who also suddenly find themselves, developing allergies or food sensitivities that have never affected them before. And I don't know about you, but I find that quite often it's really tough, isn't it, to try and get to the bottom of what's going on or what's changed. So I know this happened to you, and I think what would be really helpful is if you could sort of start by telling everyone a little bit about you and your own personal journey first.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So my name is Meera Bhogal, and actually in hindsight now, realised that I was going through and starting my perimenopause journey probably in my late 30s, but definitely by about 40. At that time, I hadn't got a clue what was happening to me. And I know we hear this story again and again now, which in some ways was reassuring for me because actually I'm not alone. But again, it left me with so much sadness. So, my journey really, I suppose, started with things like hair loss. So I started suffering with really quite a lot of hair loss, which then led me to lose my confidence. I then started to suffer with anxiety. And again, I'm not a person that has depression or anxiety or suffered from it before. I didn't quite understand what was happening to me. Why was I feeling like this? Lots of lack of self-esteem, low mood, joint pains as well, just things I've never had before. And I just could not understand or recognize who this person was that was here. Very bright, bubbly, sociable, up in the morning, bright and early. I'm one of those annoying early morning people that is kind of goes ping and, it's like, oh, and my husband is like, oh, for God's sake, and we're just complete opposites. But, I just turned into a kind of shell of my former self. And it really wasn't until I went to a yoga class that I started yoga. I had to stop running, didn't make any connection. I had to stop running because my joints were paining so much I couldn't run anymore. And I'm probably a fitness, in those days was called fitness fanatic, and now it's probably a very healthy normal. But I loved exercising. I exercised every day, always had done. Thought I was being very mindful about my diet. But I had to stop running, so that was awful because my joints were paining so much, and took up yoga. And it wasn't really till probably about 45 that the yoga teacher pointed out and said, do you think you could be going through perimenopause? Because I literally was in tears one day. I just couldn't take it anymore. I was in floods of tears. And I just was like, what on earth is that, firstly? Secondly, went to start doing research, and all I got was, don't take HRT, it's going to give you breast cancer and it's really awful for you. And that was all. I didn't get anything about any food, any diet. It just was very, very there just was very little out there. And my husband's a pharmacist, so he was like, take HRT, you'll feel much better. And I was like, no, I'm not taking HRT because I don't know what this is. The doctors would give me, if I went to the GP, which I did several times, they would, now looking back, I realized they were just treating each of the symptoms. So if I was suffering with anxiety, which I was given antidepressants, quite rightly for them, but I didn't take it because I just knew that wasn't what I needed. Um, Joint pain, it was take ibuprofen. Um, and then I did start to get digestive issues as well. And I then started to look at things from a much more holistic and a food approach. But, that wasn't the end of the symptoms. And as I approached the end of my perimenopause journey, I had the most horrific brain fog. My periods were debilitating to the point where I literally couldn't leave the house. Um, and at that point, you don't think it's going to come to an end. You just don't understand when this is going to stop. And it really wasn't until then 50, it was actually 50, I then had my menopause year. Didn't realize it because just didn't notice it. And then since then, I've been postmenopausal, and life is different now to what it was then. But have the symptoms stopped? Not really. I'm sort of navigating slightly different symptoms. The hot sweats and night sweats and hot flushes have calmed down a lot, so I'm getting a better night's sleep. Brain fog is still there, but I've learned to manage it a bit more because the other symptoms aren't so impactful. I'm sleeping a bit better than I was before. So life has definitely got so much better since post. I mean, honestly, like, you feel liberated. I feel amazing. But during that perimenopause time, the confusion, the loneliness, the sadness, almost like grief, where I just didn't know who I was. I didn't know how to find myself again. It wasn't easy. Really wasn't easy at all.
And it's not funny, but sitting here hearing you talk, you might as well have just been saying my own journey and thousands of others. I mean, I literally don't even need to say my own story anymore because it's the same as yours and the same as thousands of people. And
Thousands.
it's pretty dire. Now, you made that decision to not take HRT, I assume based on for your own personal reasons. Um, uh, did you ever take it, or did you decide I'm going to have a look at this from a sort of nutrition point of view and lifestyle tweaks?
So if we're talking about 10, 12 years ago, which was when I started to look at HRT, at that time, there wasn't the information available that there is today. So the one thing that I say to the women I speak to, and the one thing I say to myself is, if I need HRT, I will take it. There is no way on this planet that I wouldn't take it if I needed it. If I was where I was 10 years ago, I would have gone for HRT without a hesitation because it was so bad. And yes, I need, I think lifestyle and nutrition and diet and food and exercise, that is your basic foundation for life. It doesn't matter whether you're pregnant, you're a teenager, you're elderly, it doesn't matter. Those are the building blocks. But HRT would have made my life, I feel, perhaps a lot easier. So I always say to women, you have a tool in your toolbox now which can really help you. Don't dismiss it. Look at it closely. Think carefully. Get the right advice from the right people who really know what they're talking about, the practitioners who know what they're talking about. And if you need to take HRT, take it. I would take it even to this day if I needed to. I'm 54 now, but still, I still consider it if there are times when I'm thinking, okay, you know do I need to maybe take the Gina? Do I need to take anything like that? Do I need to take it topically? uh, are there more shifts happening? I would 100% take it. So
Yeah.
at that point, I didn't feel I had a choice.
And obviously, as you said, things have moved on massively, and in fact, for things like vaginal dryness, vaginal atrophy, vaginal estrogen is completely safe to a point where obviously you, as you mentioned with Gina, you can buy it over the counter. But let's talk more about how you obviously decided to take matters into your own hands. Why and how did you look at your diet and change it? And obviously, what was the impact of this on you? I mean, were you suffering yourself with food intolerances and allergies?
So I realized after my second pregnancy, so my second daughter was born, I started getting cluster migraines. and I couldn't, and it was awful. It literally sort of felt like sort of 3 days of migraine and then 2 days to get back into recovery, 3 days of migraine. It got to a point where I really wasn't functioning very well. Couldn't understand what was happening to me at the time. And again, the only thing I knew what to do with, because again, doctors were just patching, it's not their fault. That's what they know how to do. So they were patching it up and giving me medication that's getting stronger and stronger. Again, I took food into my own hands. And I sort of started to research about gluten and dairy because those were the products that I was eating the most of. Cheese and white sauce and milk and yogurt, all those delicious things, and cream, bread for bread for lunch, bread for breakfast, or pasta. So that was a very heavy part of my diet. So at that time, I started to exclude it very carefully, very mindfully. It wasn't a trend, it wasn't fashion. It was just something I realized I started to feel much better. But I knew I had to also replace those nutrients I was losing. So I was very mindful. So that was about 10, 12 years before perimenopause hit. But when perimenopause hit, it was almost like whatever I was doing before just didn't work again. So my IBS flared up again. My my intolerances got worse. I was bloated. I was lethargic. I still do get quite a lot of kind of inflammation in my, in the kind of sinus area. So a lot of histamine, perhaps issues. I didn't know what was going on, but whatever I was doing before just wasn't working. Despite taking things like people advising me, take turmeric tablets, take this, take that. I was taking all of that, and it really wasn't making any lasting impact. Just again, like I said, I wasn't necessarily gaining weight. I was actually losing weight because I wasn't able to process the food. I didn't realize that at the time. But all of that hair loss and that, itchy skin, all of that, I just didn't quite understand what was happening. But yeah, the intolerances began to show themselves in a slightly stronger light and in a very sort of different way,
Yeah.
despite me removing what I thought was, not
And I
helpful.
guess a lot of those symptoms people will relate to. I mean, I've had hair thinning, hair loss as well, and itchy skin, and it's obviously to do with the lack of estrogen or the plummeting estrogen levels. So,
Exactly.
I mean, tell us a little bit about why you then decided to set up your own food brand business. It's called Meera's Made from Scratch.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, the reason I did the food brand, and we've kind of become very specialist now. We literally only sell 3 or 4 products. We sold quite a few before, but we brought it right back down to just a couple of specialist products. Um, Really, the reason I started selling the products was because that was what I was eating at the time or drinking. So I created my own herbal infusions, my own teas. I was drinking my own bone broth that I was making. So these were things that women were asking me for advice, and I was saying, well, look, it's helping me. May not help you because we're all different, but it is helping me. And, realizing now and understanding how important estrogen is for every single function pretty much in our body, what a significant hormone it is. No one tells you that. And what impact it has on your digestion and absorption of food as well. It's no wonder that things start to go away and the things you were eating before don't work anymore. So for me, creating these products for me to eat while I was at home, and then I would, then just went on to people asking me for them, and then I went on to kind of selling them. But now I share a lot of recipes, a lot of ideas for people, and I use the knowledge I have about food, the knowledge I have about nutrition, exercise, all of that to help women to kind of just make a few adjustments here and there, but more than anything else, learn to look inwards a bit and listen to what our body is telling us. I think that we lose sight of that, I think, because we get so confused with everything else that's going on.
Yeah, 100%. And what sort of, I mean, you mentioned that there's a couple of sort of key products. Well, can you give a couple of examples?
So we sell. So one of the main biggest things we sell is bone broth. So I got introduced to bone broth, and the first time I heard about it, I was just like, "Oh, this sounds absolutely vile. There is no way I can go anywhere near this." Not much. I wasn't much of a meat eater, so we'd veer towards vegetarian food. Um, so that was really not. It was very alien to me. But somebody mentioned it, and at that, when you get to a point where you just think, "I will just literally try anything." So I just thought, right, okay, I'm going to do it. Tried it from a market from sort of reputable sources or supposedly reputable sources didn't quite kind of do what I wanted it to do. It's a bit strange. And I just said to my husband, who's a meat eater, would you mind making it? And he said, yeah. So we got the recipe, we went to the authentic way of making it, did lots of research, and actually found a way of making it where you really got the nutrients out of the whole product, and it was a very healing product. Well, that was a whole different, it completely changed me. My hair was thicker, my skin was better, my gut was healing as well. So I was literally drinking copious amounts of this. So in the end, it worked out more economical for us to actually make it than to keep buying loads of it. So bone broth is something we sell, and we really, if you are a meat eater, I recommend it just simply because I've seen it work on so many people. The other thing that we make and sell is my own turmeric mixture. And again, the reason I created that was because I literally was trying these turmeric tablets, which say high in curcumin, and it all fantastic, all singing, all dancing. And again, just wasn't quite doing what I wanted it, what I thought it should be doing. So I just played and experimented with, like I do. I love the kitchen. I love playing and experimenting with things. And I just kind of dibbled and dabbled and ended up creating this formula of spices and herbs, really good quality, that actually even having half a teaspoon of that mixed with a bit of olive oil every day, again, changed my joint pains, changed how I was feeling completely. So rather than having 10 of these tablets of turmeric that I was having, or turmeric shots and all of that, really got behind the science of how curcumin works for your body and what's the importance of it, created this turmeric mixture. And again, we sell a lot of that. And that does wonders for a lot of women, but men as well, everyone. But it's a really good anti-inflammatory, antiviral, antibacterial. So that we sell a lot of that as well.
It's funny. I mean, obviously this is a podcast, but people can also watch this on YouTube. The reason I'm smiling is because as a Jewish woman, I've grown up with chicken soup. Okay, so every Friday night for the last 50 whatever years, we've had chicken soup, and my mum and most Jewish women you speak to will call it Jewish penicillin.
Yes.
And so when you were talking about bone broth, it doesn't surprise me at all. It is the cure-all for everything in our house. If my kids are ill, it's chicken soup, and even if it's psychological, which I don't think it is, they
Yeah,
all feel better. So I'm
absolutely.
all for the benefits of bone broth, and I think there should be a lot more research done done into
Yes.
it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm right with you there. Yes, and it is. I do. I have Jewish friends as well, and my favorite bit, if they've ever invited us to Friday night dinner, which is such a treat, is that soup coming out, and the chicken liver actually as well. But the
Oh
soup
yeah,
is
chopped
delicious.
liver,
Oh, top liver.
100%. 100%. I mean, it's so interesting hearing you talking about this because so often, there's a huge sort of movement now. I mean, like you said, 7 years when I was, set up the Lassie Lounge. Again, there was no one talking about menopause. There was no one talking about perimenopause. And we've all had to sort of fight to be heard and get the right diagnosis and the right treatment options, which for me it was HRT was the missing piece in the jigsaw. But having said all that, as you said, if we're not eating well, if we're not exercising, if we're not doing some sort of self-care, then actually we're not going to feel 100% well. And so I think it's so right that you've kind of taken it into your own hands and address your own diet, and to help other people. Now there may be some women listening, and myself included, who will say, well, if I can't eat dairy and wheat, how am I going to enjoy a night out with friends? I mean, do you eat pizza ever?
If only I could. Believe me, I would love to. I mean, and again, the important thing to kind of remember is that it isn't necessarily that you've got to give up dairy or wheat, and it isn't necessarily that you've got to give anything up. So it's really important that we look at inclusion and not exclusion. But if we do exclude something, it's because it's for the right reasons. It's because it's not making you feel right. That's really important. So don't, just because I'm not having dairy and wheat, that doesn't mean I advocate that for my clients or people I speak to at all. It's very much understanding what works for you. So that's the first thing to say. I'm all about inclusion, not exclusion. So what you can include, glass of wine, a gin and tonic, whatever you want that makes you feel better. And that's the key, whether it's because it's sociable and allows you to enjoy that situation. That's important. In terms of a night out, it did have an impact on our social life. So for myself and my husband and the children as well. Initially, when I'm talking about 20 years ago now, 20 years plus actually, when I first realized that wheat and dairy really weren't working for me. You imagine 20 years ago, going to the supermarket to buy anything, it was usually plastic bread that was white and disgusting, and it was probably worse for me than the actual bread. And if you went to a restaurant, I have been turned away from restaurants in the past where they've just found it too difficult to understand what I was saying. Even can I just have a plate of boiled veg, which just sounds so boring. But at that time, that's what was there. Things have moved on now. And actually, because of the way the allergens have to be listed and how restaurants and food industry has to work now, you actually have an awful lot of choice. So a night out really doesn't have to be, a meal out at all. Doesn't have to be riddled with kind of pitfalls and oh my goodness, how am I going to feel the next day? I'll tell you some tricks though that I have learned over the years. One is if you know where you're going to eat out, um, look at the menu ahead of time so that you can pick what you're doing. So when you're there, you're not in dim lighting, and then it's like lots of noise and you've had a couple of drinks and then you may not know what you're choosing and you choose the wrong thing. So I always have a look at the menu before, if I can, and I go through it and I think, oh, I'll have that and I'll have that and I'll have that. The other trick as well is to phone the restaurant or wherever that you're going beforehand and just say, I've got an intolerance or an allergy. I am coming on this day at this time, and they'll, if they're any good, they will have you noted and they will come over and speak to you just to make you feel really comfortable. I know there's a lot of people who actually have got intolerances that find it really embarrassing because there's a group of people and suddenly you're the only one sitting there going, oh, I've got an intolerance. And then the other thing, people will turn around and say, oh, it's only an intolerance. Why don't you just have it? It's fine. But actually, that's just the worst thing you can say to someone because that may make them feel even worse than actually having to ask. So do I indulge in pizza? Yes, I do very occasionally, but sadly it has to be gluten and dairy free, so I can't indulge with everyone. But having said that, like I said, you get such gorgeous options, you don't really need to feel left out at all.
Yeah.
You can really participate fully.
Yeah, and there's amazing. I mean, I've got a son who's dairy intolerant, and there's amazing oat milk. In fact, I prefer the oat milk and the almond milk. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. There's now look. Obviously, we're so time poor as women, midlife women in particular. If perhaps we've got children, aging parents, and we're working, it's quite hard to cook meals from scratch, and it takes time. Do you have any sort of tips on sort of getting around that time barrier where you want to cook something perhaps really nutritious and healthy, but perhaps you just don't have that time to shop and prepare for hours a day?
Oh gosh, I could, whilst I love being in the kitchen, I cannot bear being in the kitchen for long periods of time. So I'm not one of these people who loves laborious kind of, stuff like all the stuff like all the chopping and the washing and the whole thing. My recipes have got to be quick. I've got two businesses I run. I've got two, now they're grown up, but at the time they were young. I've got a grandson. There's just lots going on for me. So meals have to be quick and easy. The things that the tips that I've learned, and they're very boring, I'm afraid, Katie, they really are. But but they work. So sometimes that's the other thing is going back to basics, go back to boring. You don't need, not every day needs to be a gourmet, Gordon Ramsay Michelin star meal at all. Most days just needs to be something that you can get on the table, which is, as you said, nutritious. The first thing to do is plan. We always plan wherever possible. When we plan, we also save money. That's the other thing. At the moment, it's crazy out there. It really is. So planning really does make things cost effective. It really does make life easier. So if you plan meals that the other thing I do as well with planning meals is I'll plan a meal that I like, I'll plan a meal my daughter likes, I'll plan. So through the week, everybody gets something that they want to have. And then they all have to eat it. Because I'm eating what she likes, what Ria likes on Tuesday, she's going to eat what I like on a Monday, and that's just how it is. I never, ever, ever cook more than one. I don't cook more than one meal. It is one meal. You eat it, you don't eat it. It's up to you. That's the meal. I always think about starting with protein. So I think about my protein source first, whatever that is, whether you're vegetarian or a meat eater, it doesn't matter. So, for example, I'm a meat eater. I might start with chicken. I then think about what am I going to add to it in terms of my fiber, my carbohydrates. And then I think about start to think about color. So I throw color in. Have I got some green? Have I got some red? Have I got some of that? And that automatically starts to make things look pretty. So, having a simple tomato sauce is great with your chicken, having a bit of quinoa or brown rice, and then having your vegetables, and then throwing in herbs and spices. They can transform any meal really quickly into something that is just delicious. So you don't need to make an awful lot of effort. And literally, your herbs and spices also count as your 30 different variety of plants and vegetables through the week that you need to come in. So if you've got cumin and coriander and you've got some fresh coriander in one dish, bit of ginger and garlic, and again, use things like ginger pastes and garlic pastes and things like that. You don't need to be sitting there chopping your ginger and garlic. So there's a lot that we can do to make things tasty, nutritious, and really simple as well.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant advice. And I think a lot of women who are perhaps not so confident about cooking, as you said, you've got lots of lovely recipes. And at the end of this podcast, I'm going to have all the show notes where people can find you if people are, interested in finding out more. But before I let you go, I did have one more question for you.
Yes.
I know in my community in particular, and lots of minority communities, menopause and perimenopause and women's health in general is still very taboo, however much we're all talking about it. How do you sort of see the South Asian community in particular being similar? And do you feel like you're sort of making waves, and it's important to have this sort of representation out there so that people feel less alone?
Katie, the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is literally because of that. That is why I'm doing what I'm doing today, why I'm shouting out about menopause, why I haven't stopped doing that. Why I feel it's so important is because within the South Asian community, menopause and women's health, as you have just pointed out, is something that is bottom of the list. And it's bottom of the list not just for the community, but for the women themselves. And women, the way we are kind of brought up, and I'm hoping things are changing, is that, we don't come first, we come bottom. We are very much, we look after everybody, we bring everyone together, we put the food on the table, doesn't matter at what cost to our health. And I've seen a lot of suffering, and I see a lot of women having lots of misinformation, lots of myths. You won't get menopause because you're keeping yourself healthy. Menopause is something that only white women get. Menopause is a disease, just the most incredible myths, which I just thought this has to stop, because actually every woman is going to go through this. And I really want to get the message out there. So visiting temples and gurdwaras, anywhere, any community space that will have me, schools and anywhere at all, where I can turn up and they can see and look at me and think, you look like my mum, or you look like my sister, or you look like me, makes a huge difference. And I think representation needs to be taken a lot more seriously. And I love that, as you said, everyone's talking about it. And I love the fact that we've had these documentaries on the BBC, on Channel 4, sorry, with Davina. And I love that there is more interest. And without that, we wouldn't be where we are today. But we've also got to really take a bit more of a view, a wider, more diverse view, and bring in all the different cultures and ethnicities and people that represent that, to make sure that we're not leaving anyone behind.
100%. I couldn't agree more with you. And I think, looking at the own sort of matriarchal figures in my life, that a lot of it was it was like a badge of honor. Oh, you don't know, you'll never know my suffering, it used to,
Yes.
and I was like, well, what do you want? A medal? You don't need to suffer.
No.
And this should be a really positive time in our life. It should be joyous. I don't like the negative stereotyping around it. Actually, we just want to get on with the rest of our lives and
We
have
do.
a happy time.
Yes,
And
and
be yourself.
exactly. We just want to have fun. We don't want to be miserable and being ill and being labeled and being, like whatever. It's not fun. So actually, if you give us a little bit of help and support in the right way, you will have these most incredible women, whether in the workplace or at home or in your lives and relationships. We're there. We're still there. We just need that love, that understanding, and that awareness. And actually, you will have these phenomenal women in your lives for a very, very long time, God willing.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Well, listen, Meera, thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a brilliant chat. And for anyone that wants to find out more about you, the website, do you want to tell everyone your website address?
Lovely. Yeah, thank you. So the website is mirasmadefromscratch.co.uk. You'll find lots of things on there, and the events and programs that I run as well, and podcasts, linked to my podcast, and also links to things like blogs and things like that as well, and free resources as well. So I do signpost different useful other websites as well. And I'm on Instagram, really active on Instagram. I do love Instagram. So it's just Meera Bhogal on Instagram. It's just Meera Bhogal, Meera Bhogal.
And that's spelled Meera But as I said, we'll put all that in the show notes. So hope everyone found that interesting and helpful. And thanks so much, Meera,
Thank you
again.
so much, Katie. Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Lassie Lounge Plus, the online menopause clinic. With thanks to our podcast producer, Emily Crosby Media.